So I was in the Dominican Republic for a month, living with a host family, working in a really impoverished third world community, and filming my first documentary. And this is how the story goes. Alright, it's technically June 16th, it's tomorrow, Friday. I leave my flight is at 5 p.m. for the Dominican Republic. I've been working on planning this flight and making it, been trying to realize this trip for like 9 months now. I'm going to the Dominican Republic for 3 weeks, and I'm going to produce, film, edit, create my first documentary.
Aparatos electrónicos grandes como computadores deben ser apagados, desconectados, guardados, teléfonos móviles.
So I flew out on June 16th, and I met up with 3 of my friends in New York, and we touched down in the country a day before the host families were ready to take us in, so I rented us an Airbnb. It had like 4 bedrooms, it had 4 bathrooms, it had a wraparound balcony with 4 separate entrances, and when we got there and we all got settled in, I went out onto my balcony and I got one of my first looks at the country that I was about to be living in. This is by far the most surreal experience of my entire life. I've only ever been to Canada, like, kind of. So this is insane. I'm smack dab in the middle of a third world country right now. Like, I don't even know what to think. Holy shit. Like, I literally cannot comprehend this right now. I saw palm trees, I saw corrugated metal roofs, I saw clothing lines. I was just totally fucking overwhelmed. I'd never seen anything like this in my entire life. So the first week carried out, and with a group of people we went to a Haitian market, which is essentially like a big farmer's market. So later in the week we visited a child sanctuary for impoverished kids that would grow up trying to pick through a giant landfill that was in the distance. They would try and pick through that and find things that they could salvage and sell for money. And the sanctuary would pull the kids out of those landfills and put them in a schooling system, and they would learn skills, they would get fed, they would do activities, they would learn language. It was a great thing, and we volunteered there. We played with the kids. That shit was heartwarming. So towards the end of our first week, we went to this cigar factory.
I went to Harper Island the other day. I went to Harper Island the other day. I was drinking Weymouth behind the bar. Then I was smoking a 1 shilling cigar. So I went to Long Island the other day.
And then finally we went to something called a batey. Now the batey was one of the reasons, it was the primary reason that I wanted to go on this trip to begin with. It was part of the travel itinerary for, let me backtrack. So the first 2 weeks of my month there were a study abroad trip, and then I just booked my ticket 2 weeks after everyone else left, and I stayed with the same host family, and I was hooked up via the program, but I was on my own after that. And during the travel itinerary of the study abroad portion of the trip, there's, beach day, guest lecture, this, that, and there was one day that said visit Batey. It said visit Batey Baraguana. And I didn't know what that was, and we covered it briefly in a meeting before I left for the Dominican Republic. And so I did a lot of my own research, and I learned essentially Bateys are, traditionally they are communities that are built on the edge of a giant sugarcane field, and these people will live in these little communities and they will work in the sugarcane fields. They'll cut the sugarcane and they'll weigh it, and they'll get paid based on how much they cut. But when we went to Batey Baraguana, I figured out that this batey was unique in the sense that there was no sugarcane. The Dominican government had cut down all the sugarcane, which left the people with no money, no way to make income. It was just a very impoverished, stagnant community. And the field that used to harbor all this sugarcane had nothing but trash. It was filled with just trash. So the people that live in this specific Batey Baraguana, they have very limited access to potable water, very limited access to food. They're really far from the big cities. They have no access to healthcare. Just a stagnant community where the people have nowhere to go, nothing to do, nobody to help them. Some people will travel long distances to find work, and then some of them simply can't do that because of injuries they have, because of health issues that they have. So the issue with this next part of the vlog is that a lot of these clips that I have of the batey that I was in, I'm using my documentary. That was the main purpose of this trip, was to go down there, make a documentary to raise awareness of the batey, and then go from there. So I can show some of the clips, and then some of them I need to reserve for the actual film. One of the most influential people I met on this trip and in the batey was this guy named Clarence. And he was from Haiti. He spoke Haitian Creole, he spoke Spanish, and he spoke English. And he was like my main man. He showed me how to navigate from the main city, Santiago de los Caballeros, that I was living in. He showed me how to navigate from there all the way up to Batey Baraguana. He hooked me up with the right people, and I got all the clips that I need to hopefully make a very influential documentary. And with this documentary, I'm going to attach a fundraiser. I'm working on the documentary now. And with that, I'm going to raise money to return to the batey. I'll produce a second documentary on my own, but the purpose is going to be to build houses. To replace houses like this, like this, like this. One more person I want to talk about, I suppose, is this guy named Faniel. Because I was in the Caribbean, there are tropical rainstorms that just come out of nowhere on a semi-regular basis. So I was in the batey, and I just finished interviewing a couple of elders, and the rain just started pissing. And this guy Faniel, he tells me to come into his house. He's just like, take refuge in my house. So I run into his house, and I was blown away. This is one of the first houses in the batey that I had actually entered. It was a very small shack made solely out of corrugated metal, and then some tree branches. And the entirety of the house was a lot smaller than this bedroom that I'm in right now. He had one plastic chair. It was like a plastic lawn chair, and the back was broken off of it, so it was more like a stool. And that was the only chair in his house, which he insisted that I sit on. So I sat on his chair, and what he did is he sat on a cinder block with a folded towel on top of it. That was his chair, because he insisted that I be comfortable and I sit in his chair. He had this empty tin where the roof of the top of the tin was concaved a little bit, and he had coals set on top of it, and he lit the coals, and he had one little pot, and in that pot he was cooking carrots, and that was the only food that he had in his possession until further notice. The hospitality that this guy was showing me was totally unmatched. I had never seen anything like it. Considering his situation, what he had, what he didn't have, I was totally fucking blown away. So this rainstorm was longer than the usual, and this one went on for a good hour. The rain was just pissing down. It pisses down really hard, like you don't want to go outside. So we were sitting in his house, and the rusted corrugated metal roof was leaking through, and so it was leaking and it was getting the floor wet, and he was wet. I was sitting in a dry portion under a solid part of the roof, and we're just sitting there and we're talking about the differences between my country and his country. And I pulled up a map and I was just showing him where I was in America, where I was in relation to him, and we were just having this fantastic conversation. And while that's happening, the front door starts to rattle and it comes open, and this soaking wet little girl in a raincoat comes in and she hugs Faniel, and then she comes back out. And then Faniel turns to me and says, "That was my daughter." So he's in this little shed. It's probably 8 by 8, and he's cooking one little pot of like vegetables and fruit, and that's all the food he has until further notice. And he insisted that I have some. That just I was totally taken aback when he said that, because Faniel was living in a house that was half of the size of my bedroom. It was leaking. This man had nothing, and on top of that he had a daughter to feed, and he still insisted that I have some of his food. Of course I denied. There was no way that I could take some of that man's food, so I didn't. Instead I took this mango fruit roll-up that I had out of my backpack. That was my lunch for the day, and I tore it in half and I gave it to him, and he said it was fantastic and that he had never had anything like it. We just sat there while the storm outside raged on, and we bonded over this fruit roll-up and over our differences and how those made us unique and interesting to one another. I don't know how much more about the batey I want to talk about right now. There's so much to be said, there's so much to be shown, there's so much to be done in Batey Paraguana and in all the other bateys in the Dominican Republic. There are 500 scattered throughout the country. All these people need help, and none of them can do it on their own. So, yeah. I don't know. But I'm going to save that for my documentary, so I think that's where I'm going to end this travel vlog.